Hello and welcome to this FeedInfo webcast where we will be discussing the benefits of using black soldier fly larvae as an alternative protein source in feed formulations and the unique properties and nutrients these insects can bring to animal nutrition. My name is Monet and I am the Perspectives content editor here at FeedInfo, and I will be your moderator for this webcast. Today's session was developed in partnership with our friends at EnviroFlight, who you will be hearing from today, and we'd like to thank them for their support. Firstly, I would like to explain how the session will work if you have not seen a FeedInfo webcast before. We have pre-recorded the session, but our speakers are online right now to take your questions in the questions tab, which you can find on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. If you post a question in the questions tab, they will be able to type you a response immediately, so please ask away throughout the webcast. We will also be releasing a number of polls throughout the webcast, so if you want to share your opinions and see what others in the industry are thinking, do participate in these in the polls tab, which you can also find on the bottom right hand side of the screen. Now, I would like to quickly introduce our speakers who will be sharing their expertise with us today on black soldier fly. So we have with us Liz Koutsos, president of EnviroFlight, and Bree, Modica, technical sales rep, also from EnviroFlight. So before we jump in, I would like to go around and ask our speakers to properly introduce themselves and tell us a bit more about what it is that they do. Liz, can I start with you, please?
Absolutely. So hi, I'm Liz Koutsos. I'm the president of EnviroFlight, and we've been working for a number of years to commercialize black soldier fly larvae by upcycling regionally available food and feed byproducts to create high quality, high value nutrition for the animal feed industry. My background is nutrition and immunology for a wide variety of animal species, and I'm really excited to bring all of those variety of experiences I have to this industry and help build this business from essentially the ground up.
Thank you so much, Liz. And Bree, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, please?
Absolutely, yeah. Bree Modica. I'm the technical sales rep for EnviroFlight. So my background is also in animal nutrition. I worked more specifically on specialty pet product formulation and R&D. So I'm able to bring that to this new industry and introduce this novel ingredient into a wide variety of animal diets.
Thank you both for that. Now, I cannot wait to get into this fascinating topic with the two of you and find out more about how black soldier fly larvae can benefit animal nutrition and also further the industry's sustainability initiatives. Now, of course, EnviroFlight is known for producing feed ingredients from black soldier fly larvae, like you mentioned earlier, Liz. So to get everyone on the same page, let's kick off with a quick look at why exactly this insect. So Bree, I'm gonna come to you. What makes black soldier fly larvae so useful for animal nutrition applications?
So black soldier fly larvae have a lot of different benefits. The first one is that they're a very natural food item. So your dogs and cats are going to be outside, hunting down those insects that are running around the yard. They're going to be found in livestock diets as they're grazing. And then, of course, they're going to purposefully be part of a lot of different specialty pet diets. So this ingredient is super versatile. Second, it's very safe for our people to work with. So they're silent, they don't sting, they don't bite, they don't carry any zoonotic diseases. So especially as we look at this industry to scale up and to grow, we don't have any concerns with working with this animal. And then last thing is that they mitigate a lot of those environmental impacts, including climate change, land use, water use, and even the amount of feed that's used for this species. The insect doesn't need to eat for its entire life cycle, so we're able to just mitigate a lot of those impacts that we're seeing across the globe right now.
Thank you so much for that, Bree. And I'll stay with you for the next question. What can black soldier fly larvae actually bring to formulations in terms of the necessary nutrients that an animal needs? And how does what we feed these insects impact their nutritional value at the end of the day?
So with a single insect, we can make 4 different primary ingredients or products, which is really neat. So first, the whole larva itself is edible, so there's no waste. The entire animal, brings protein, it brings high quality fats. You have chitin, antimicrobial peptides, lauric acid, so a lot of value added benefits along with a really great nutritional profile. But we can also create a defatted high protein meal. It has a really great amino acid profile that's comparable to existing high quality traditional protein sources. And it also has really great digestibility. We have a fat product, which is 40% lauric acid. So that's got antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties, of course, very energy dense ingredients. And then we have our EnviroFeed, which is what's left over from raising our larvae. So that's a lower protein, higher carbohydrate feed. And all of those can be used in a formula to target specific needs or to complement what's currently being used in the formula. But what you do feed the larva affects what you're going to get on the other end. So we do use lower quality byproducts. They're locally sourced, likely not to go into other animal feed or pet foods. So we're able to feed those to our larvae. And then we feed that in a formulated, consistent diet, just like you would any other animal system. And so what comes out on the other end in terms of our nutrient profile is extremely consistent.
Thank you for that, Bree. I'm going to come to you now, Liz. Just quickly for our audience, why should they really care about feedstock programs when considering black soldier fly larva or any other insect ingredient for their formulations for that matter? Does it really matter? And what else should they be keeping in mind when they're shopping around for these ingredients?
It's a great question. So first and foremost, I think it's important to understand that the black soldier fly larva really is what it eats. And so we can change the nutritional profile of the larva and the resulting ingredients that we make from those larvae, depending on how we feed that insect. So it's really important to understand what feedstock is being used, because that helps you understand what the output in terms of nutrition is going to be. It's also really important to understand the consistency of the feedstock, because if you have a really variable input stream, you likely will have a lot of variability in the output and the finished nutrition quality. In the United States, the definition, the approved use of black soldier fly larvae, either in the whole dried forms or in meal and oil, is required. Those larvae are required to be fed AFCO approved ingredients. So it's also really important to understand that we have, there are lots of amazing things that we could consider feeding black soldier fly larvae, because they are so good at converting a variety of feedstocks into high quality protein and energy. But in the current regulatory system, we have to use AFCO approved feedstock. So it's a really important issue, particularly if you're looking at products that are coming from other countries where ingredients may be totally wholesome and safe, but maybe haven't gone through the AFCO approval process. We also take a lot of time internally to look at safety risks. Black soldier fly larvae are amazing little mediators of environmental contaminants, because that's the environment that they naturally occur in. So they're really good at detoxifying things like mycotoxins, antibiotic residues, and things like that. But as a producer, we need to make sure that if any of those things might be found in the feedstock, we are positive that there's no bioaccumulation in the larva that could impact the nutrition of the animals that we would feed those insects to. We also spend a lot of time looking for locally and regionally sourced ingredients. Obviously, the sustainability piece of black soldier fly larvae is one of the main reasons this insect has been commercialized. And so we don't want to be transporting feedstocks very long distances, because that adds to our carbon footprint and that of the ingredients that we're producing. And then finally, the cost factor. You know, we spend a lot of time, just like any other livestock producer, we spend a lot of time looking at optimal nutrition for our larvae, optimal nutrition on the output of the ingredients that we're creating, and then optimal pricing, because we do have to spend money to buy ingredients. So we obviously want to make sure we're being as economical as possible so that our customer can get the best price point on our ingredients.
Thank you, Liz. Now, we've talked a bit about the benefits of and usefulness of black soldier fly larvae as a feed ingredient already. But as they say, the proof is in the pudding. So I was wondering if you could share some of the latest research you've done and some of the findings that you guys have found on the application of black soldier fly larva products in animal diets and how they can actually impact the health and productivity of these animals.
Absolutely. It's one of our favorite topics. We have a whole host of researchers that work on a variety of research questions, but understanding how our ingredients can be applied in animal feeding systems to add value to those animals and to their end consumers or end users, if you will, is really, really critical. And so at EnviroFlight, we're really proud of the breadth and depth of research that we have sponsored and conducted to demonstrate not only safety of our ingredients, but many of those research projects have ended up in the AFCO dossiers to get regulatory approval, but also to demonstrate the value to the animal beyond just safety and efficacy, that we can produce healthier animals or more disease resilient animals. So I'll give you just a few examples of some of the work that we have done. We've done quite a bit of work in poultry species. In broiler chickens, we demonstrated that both the meal and the oil were safe for feeding to broiler chickens, and essentially can be a good alternative to traditional protein and energy sources. In laying hens, we ran a trial at Penn State, and that trial we used high-line layers, and we fed them either whole dried larvae, EnviroMeal, or EnviroOil at various inclusion rates, and compared them to traditional feed ingredients. And what we found is that the meal and the oil and the whole dried larva are really effective alternatives to things like soybean meal, soybean oil. And in fact, the whole dried larva can augment the need for calcium in laying hen diets. And we got similar or better feed conversion efficiency and number of eggs laid. And really uniquely, we can improve the pigmentation of the egg yolk, which is a big driver for consumers to see a high quality, well pigmented egg yolk as an indicator of a healthy laying hen. Those data have been published and they're publicly available, and we're happy to share those papers with anybody who may be interested. We've also done a whole lot of work in young pigs, again, initially to demonstrate safety for regulatory approvals. We've done that for both the EnviroMeal and our oil. And more recently, we've conducted what I would call a semi-commercial scale feeding trial using oil in nursery pigs. We fed it over 3 phases, so really similar to a commercial feeding program. And we went up to 6% dietary inclusion of EnviroOil, and that replaced corn oil. In previous trials, we've also replaced poultry fat with similar efficacy. What's exciting about our oil trials in baby pigs is that we see linear and statistically significant improvements in feed efficiency in those young pigs that are fed the higher inclusion rates of oil. So 4 or 6% EnviroOil allowed young pigs to grow better than the equivalent amount of corn oil or poultry fat. And what that ends up meaning is that at day 40, as you're moving out of the nursery phase, you have a larger body weight of that young piglet. These were very clean trials, so we didn't have a lot of traditional kind of stressors you'd see in commercial scale operations. But we do believe that one of the underlying mechanisms for this improvement in gain is because of the lauric acid content. And as Bree mentioned, lauric acid has very potent antimicrobial activity. So it's likely that we're not only improving the efficiency of the gain of the animal because it's accessing nutrition that we are providing in a new form, but also that we're improving the gut health of that animal. So it's just better able to utilize the dietary ingredients that are being provided. We've also begun to do quite a bit of work looking at our EnviroFeed ingredient, and we think that has a lot of potential in a variety of animal feed programs, including cattle diets. We've done some in vitro work looking at dairy cattle models where you take the rumen fluid from the dairy cow and you basically in a test tube you examine whether or not that feed ingredient can supply the nutrition that's needed for the rumen microflora. And what we find is that when we provide EnviroFeed, it actually has better feeding value to a dairy cow simulation than corn would. So it's a great energy source for cows, for both dairy cows and for beef cattle. And we saw less of a pH drop. So normally when you feed a high carb diet to cattle, you can see a drop in rumen pH, which can be associated with health concerns. And so if we can see less of that rumen pH drop while still providing high energy substrates, this is a great opportunity to provide valuable nutrition while mitigating some of the downside risk of feeding carbohydrates to cattle. We've also done a lot of work looking in aquaculture diets. So we think, if you think about insects in animal agriculture, fish, And fish applications and aquaculture applications have really been the basis for a lot of the original funding and investment into insect production systems, with the concept that if we could reduce the impact of wild fisheries and reduce the need for fish meal, then insects could be this really sustainable alternative in aquaculture systems. So there's been a whole lot of research done by ourselves and others to demonstrate that possibility. We've recently demonstrated not only that our ingredient EnviroMeal and EnviroBug could be an excellent source of nutrition to young trout, but we also have shown that after those animals have been fed our ingredients for 10 weeks, and we challenge them with cold water disease, a truly commercially relevant disease in trout systems, we see a significant reduction in mortality. So basically improving the disease resilience, or the ability of those trout to fight disease, by including relatively low concentrations of our whole dried larva or EnviroMeal. So again, really exciting. We're moving from basic nutrition applications of these insect-derived ingredients. We know they're safe. We know they can be used as an alternative to traditional protein and energy sources. And now what we're seeing is that we can actually enhance the health or optimize the health of the animals that we're feeding as well. So really, really exciting newer research. We also are demonstrating that we're changing the microflora, the gut microbiome, in response to feeding these insect-derived ingredients. To Bree's point earlier, most animal species have evolved to have some level of insect consumption in their natural diets or natural feeding programs. So we would hypothesize that those changes in the gut microbiome that occur when we feed these animals an ingredient they would naturally be exposed to are probably very beneficial to the overall health and well-being of those fish. We've also, again, done a lot of work with our EnviroFeed, as I mentioned in the cattle models, but we've also seen some really exciting data in omnivorous fish species like catfish and tilapia. So we know we can use 15 to 20% inclusion rates of our EnviroFeed and get enhanced performance in terms of body weight gain and feed conversion in both catfish and tilapia. Again, we want to take our one step further, though, and look at the health and well-being of those animals as well. So we just recently finished a commercial scale catfish trial. We had over 8,000 fish per raceway that were fed either a controlled, typical commercial diet or a diet that contained 15% of our EnviroFeed. And that would have been as an alternative to soybean meal, distillers grains, and corn in the diet. And we saw a similar or better performance in the catfish that were fed our EnviroFeed ingredient. More excitingly, we saw reduction in mortality to clinical challenges, disease challenges those catfish were exposed to in their commercial raceways. And two of the most common pathogens in catfish, we saw reductions in mortality when our fish were fed EnviroFeed. So again, taking that next step and demonstrating that there is enhanced value of our ingredients beyond just nutrition. They have great nutrition, but we can get that extra little win by improving animal health and well-being. That's a fabulous thing for insect-derived ingredients. So, and then, I'd like to transition just from talking about commercial livestock, poultry, and swine species and a little bit into our beloved companion animals. So we also have done a tremendous amount of work to demonstrate safety and efficacy of our ingredients in dogs, and that has resulted in the recent AFCO approval for whole dried larva meal and oil in adult dog diets. In our original work, basically we tested just palatability and acceptance. Would dogs eat diets containing the meal and the oil products? And the answer was yes, resoundingly. Dogs very much like diets containing EnviroMeal and EnviroOil. We then did research to demonstrate that digestibility of our ingredients was very good. Obviously, digestibility in your dogs and cats is very important because that impacts how much we have to clean up. And so having a highly digestible diet is ideal in our companion animal species. And so we demonstrated very similar digestibility to traditional high quality protein and energy ingredients like poultry meal and poultry fat. And then we did some additional work to demonstrate that over a longer period of time, that dogs could consume these ingredients and continue to maintain normal body weights, health and well-being parameters. So we're very excited for those data to have supported the AFCO, the recent AFCO approval for dogs. We've also done some feline work, and I think the industry as a whole is going to start seeing progress in approval for cats for these ingredients in the United States. The work that we've done in cats has also demonstrated palatability. We've done this in both dry extruded kibble and in wet diets. and really exciting in wet diets. Cats actually prefer our diets containing EnviroMeal or EnviroBug or EnviroOil at about a 2-to-1 ratio to the control diet containing a poultry fat and poultry meal base inclusion. We've again done the digestibility work to demonstrate good digestibility of our ingredients, and we're now working on a lot of the longer term trials to demonstrate the safety and efficacy over time. And some of those trials are already published. We've gone out to about 70 days of feeding adult cats with really great performance results. So again, we're really excited to see kind of the evolution of the insect market to expand to cats, and I think we'll see that in the United States in the very near future.
Thank you so much for that, Liz. That's a lot of exciting research that you mentioned there. So thank you so much for that. You also mentioned some bits and pieces about the unique properties that black soldier fly larvae can actually bring to animal nutrition. You mentioned it being a great source of lauric acid. You mentioned it having some impact on the gut microbiome. So I was wondering whether there are any other unique properties of black soldier fly larvae that can benefit animal production. It being such a novel ingredient, what additional values can it bring to formulations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think first and foremost, if we focus on the companion animal applications, we know that there are a lot of dogs and cats that have food allergies. And so just from an allergenicity perspective, introducing insects as a primary protein source may provide a novel ingredient that can be used for animals that have already experienced food allergies to other traditional protein sources. So there's that application, again, beyond nutrition, but to allow a dog or cat owner to expand the types of proteins they may be able to offer without the detrimental consequences of allergenicity. But there's also those value-added properties that we think have application across livestock, poultry, swine, and companion animals. And you mentioned lauric acid. So lauric acid is a C12 saturated fatty acid. It's a really short chain fatty acid. What's exciting about that fatty acid is that you really don't need a lot of digestive impact to be able to use it as an energy source. And so that's why we think really young animals like baby pigs are so good at using it as an energy source. It's likely that geriatric animals will have the same benefit, where gut health is maybe starting to be on the decline, but you still want to provide really good energy for both the gut and the rest of the normal metabolism. Lauric acid is naturally found in coconut and palm oil. Palm kernel oil, that is, and third highest concentration naturally occurring is in black soldier fly larva oil. So we think it's a really exciting, sustainable option to provide lauric acid to animal feeding systems, and then in the future, potentially other industries that commonly use lauric acid. We mentioned the data in baby pigs showing improved body weight over a very short 40-day feeding trial right after weaning. So this is a really high stress period for baby pigs. They're going from milk to traditional feed ingredients, and anything that we can do to help that gut stay healthy and be able to absorb nutrients will be reflected in better feed efficiency and better body weight gain. So again, it's very likely that the performance impacts we've seen in nursery pigs are related not just to the straight energy content of the diet, but to the fact that lauric acid probably improves gut health and is readily available as an energy source to those very young animals. We know chitin is found in the exoskeleton of insects, and it can act as actually an energy source and a nitrogen source if the animals have the enzyme chitinase. So if you think about animals that traditionally eat insects like chickens, those animals will have chitinase and can actually use chitin as a nutrition source. But if they don't have that enzyme, or it's not very active, then chitin acts like a prebiotic, which means it's helping to regulate the gut microflora and which bacterial populations grow. And in general, chitin has been shown to improve the proportions of beneficial bacteria in the guts of animals, and decrease the proportions of potentially pathogenic or detrimental bacteria. There is a tipping point, particularly in commercial livestock systems, where too much chitin could act as more of a fiber source and reduce the overall digestibility of the diet. So you kind of have a balancing act where a little bit is good, but you have to be careful not to get too high. And what we know is that black soldier fly larvae have about 5% chitin, and other insect species are a little bit higher. I think all of them can be used very effectively in the diet to support that gut health. And kind of improve the gut microbiome. And then finally, I think it's really exciting is that insects have a natural immune system and natural defenses that consist of primarily antimicrobial peptides. So they make these really little peptides that are their defenses for all the environmental things and pathogens they may be exposed to in their natural environment. What's cool is those tiny little peptides survive processing, so that when we make whole dried larvae or we make EnviroMeal, those antimicrobial peptides follow through into that finished product and actually have efficacy in the animals that we are feeding those products to. This has been demonstrated in a number of species that at very low inclusion rates of black soldier fly larva derived ingredients, we can reduce mortality associated with clinical disease. So again, we've shown this in trout and others have shown this in broiler chickens and in dogs, that we can fundamentally reduce the immune response or the success of that immune response by feeding insect-derived ingredients. It's important to note that we know those antimicrobial peptides are modulated by both diet and environment. So not all black soldier fly larvae would have the same antimicrobial potential. The feeding program and the way that those insects are raised will directly impact that potential. Here at EnviroFlight, we've invested a lot into our research group to understand how antimicrobial activity changes in response to different feeding programs, and then what impact that would have on the animal species or particular organism that we're interested in. So I think it's a really exciting area and provides a lot of opportunity for application of insect-derived ingredients to essentially mitigate the typical challenges that animals would see either in their livestock production systems or your dog or your cat being exposed to things in the yard or in the household. So really exciting opportunities for applications of these ingredients that we think that the research that's coming out now and that we're working on will continue to develop that value proposition.
Thank you so much, Liz. Now, you've told me throughout this webinar, what you've told me throughout this webinar is that you've got a great ingredient on your hands. Now, of course, it's great that we're talking about black soldier fly larva's potential and its usefulness as a feed ingredient. But like other feed ingredients and additives, there is a regulatory process that needs to be followed to bring these ingredients to market. So can you give us an idea of the regulatory landscape right now concerning these ingredients? I know you guys are in the US, so let's start there. But also, I'm curious about if you have any insights about other markets like Europe and Asia, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you that we are much better versed at the US regulatory environment, but I will share what I can as relative to the other environments right now. In the United States, again, you go through the AFCO approval process. There's a couple other ways to get regulatory approval, but we have focused on the AFCO process. Once you go through that process, essentially you're going to the FDA with data that shows that your ingredient is safe. And we work with the FDA to make sure that the experiments that we're running meet their expectations. We present the data, they review the data, and then we work with the American Association of Feed Control Officials to propose a definition for the ingredient. And then they have time to review both FDA's responses and have conversations between all of the state regulators in the United States. And ultimately, they vote on whether that ingredient definition will become approved. We've had some great wins in this area. So we have approval for our whole dried larva, meal, and oil for adult dogs. We have approval for whole dried larva and meal in poultry. We have approval for all three in pigs, and we have approval for whole dried larva and meal in salmonids, so salmon and trout, and associated related species, and then for the oil in finfish. There are a number of other dossiers that are either in prep or under review right now, so we anticipate that kind of regulatory approval cohort will get larger as time goes on. We're also aware that there are some dossiers currently in for other insect species. So I think we'll see the US regulatory environment continue to open up to a variety of insect-derived ingredients. I will mention that EnviroFeed, the biomass that we talked about, that already has regulatory approval for all species applications in the United States. In Canada, generally the CFIA follows the AFCO approved definitions, but there is an additional step that you need to register your product in Canada. So essentially you're proving that your ingredients meet the specifications of the definition. So there's one additional step. The uniqueness in Canada is that pet food is not, it's really, the regulations are related to livestock feed applications. So anything that's going to go into the human food chain, pets and tropical fish and things like that are a little bit more accessible without kind of the entire safety dossier being presented. The EU is somewhat similar in that pet food has regulatory approval because those animals are not going into the human food chain, whereas pigs, poultry, and aquaculture, there is now approval for insects, but those had to go through that safety evaluation process. The other unique thing in the EU is that you cannot feed anything of animal origin to insects and feed that back to other animal species, where in the US, again, AFCO defined ingredients are accessible. So there is potential to be using animal derived ingredients in the feedstock. I'm personally not familiar with the regulatory approval process in Asia, so I'm not going to comment on that.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you so much, Liz. And my follow-up question to that is, you have gotten us all very excited about black soldier fly larva and its applications in animal nutrition. I am, however, wondering, is there more for you guys to explore here? You've already shared a lot of research with us today, but is there more to explore here, and what can we expect to see from you and this industry in the future?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we pride ourselves on the research and development and innovation focus that we have had for 5+ years. So we continue to refine and develop knowledge on a variety of areas, including genetics, immunology, nutrition, reproductive physiology. So we're really, I think you continue to see a lot of exciting things come out of our innovation center and via our collaborations with universities and other external research partners. And there's lots of other folks that are doing really cool research. So I think we're just going to continue to see and learn what insects can do for animal feeding applications as time goes by. I think in general, for the entire insect industry, what we're seeing is tremendous growth. There's still a whole lot of interest in scaling up from pilot scale facilities to commercial scale operations. And I think what we will see in the near future is that folks that are at a commercial scale will begin to expand and increase the number of commercial scale facilities. As a percentage of the protein industry, we're tiny. So we do, I think as an industry, recognize that scaling will be required to get to that critical mass for both economics and so that larger customer opportunities can be a reality. We do know over $2 billion has been invested globally into this industry, though. So we know we're moving forward, and we're really excited to see the expansions that are coming online. And I think finally, regulatory approvals, as we continue to see regulatory markets open or regulatory approvals come so that we can open new markets, we're going to see further applications of these ingredients in a variety of different feeding programs. So I think in the next 3 to 5 years, as you hopefully see the entire regulatory approval pathway open, there'll be that many more discussion points and topics to review of how we can apply these ingredients in a variety of other animal feeding systems.
So definitely a lot more to expect from you guys in the future and a lot more to explore. And there we have it. We've reached the end of our webinar, but just before you go, I wanted to ask you, Liz and Bree, if there are any final thoughts on black soldier fly larva and its use in animal production and pet nutrition that you guys would like to leave our audience with today. Liz, can I start with you, please?
Yeah, I think, I guess my final thoughts are, I would like to say a big thank you to all of those early adopters of insect-derived ingredients, because I think as we are scaling up the industry, we know there's high costs of capital to build facilities. There's a lot of learnings. As I tell my team all the time, there was no rule book on how to do this. We and everybody else in the industry are learning as we go. And so we're really, really proud of those early adopters that have taken the leap, that understand the impact on sustainability, that understand this incredible opportunity to improve animal health and well-being that is in front of us, and are willing to be the first to market and the first to try out these ingredients. So I think we're really proud of what we've done to demonstrate safety and the value and the opportunity to use these ingredients. But I would like to give a shout out to those folks on the other side of it that are being the first folks and the innovators to decide to apply these ingredients into their animal feeding programs.
And Bree, what would you like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I think actually my final thoughts really complement what Liz said, in that if you haven't adopted insect ingredients and you're interested in knowing more, we really love to talk with different producers, industry, actual pet food customers, just people that have an interest in what this industry is, what we're doing, what's known thus far, and where we're going. So please feel free to reach out, and we're happy to chat with anyone and share that information.
Thank you both for that. And thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us on the possibilities that black soldier fly larvae can offer in livestock production and pet nutrition, and the nutritional and sustainability challenges it can help these industries answer. It was a very interesting and educational session, I must say. And I would like to thank you guys again for sharing your thoughts with us. And for our audience, Liz and Bree are still online and will be for another 15 minutes or so. So keep putting your questions to them if you have any questions. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and to Liz and Bree who contributed to the session today. We hope you found it interesting and that you tune in to future sessions from FeedInfo.